Hey, history divers, dive with me into the history of World War II. Let's embark on a journey back to the late 30s, a time of political tension and military maneuvering that eventually ignited the spark of the most devastating conflict in human history. In the early morning of September 1st, 1939, the world was jolted awake by the thunderous echoes of war. Germany, under the command of Adolf Hitler, launched a full-scale invasion of Poland. This event marked the beginning of a global conflict that would span 6 tumultuous years. The invasion of Poland was not a random act of aggression. It was the culmination of a series of political and diplomatic maneuvers carefully orchestrated by the German leadership. Hitler, thirsty for power and driven by a vision of racial supremacy, had already begun expanding Germany's territory. However, the invasion of Poland was a step too far, a blatant violation of international law. The world watched in horror as Poland fell under German occupation. This was a wake-up call for the international community. The invasion was a clear signal that Hitler's ambitions were not confined to Germany's immediate neighbors. Britain and France, two of the most powerful nations in the world at the time, could no longer stand by and watch. On September 3rd, they declared war on Germany, marking the beginning of their active involvement in the conflict. This was not a decision taken lightly. It was a response to an existential threat, a forceful pushback against the tide of tyranny sweeping across Europe. Yet, despite their declarations, Britain and France were not prepared for the scale and intensity of the war that was to come. Their initial military efforts were tentative, marked by a period of inaction known as the Phony War. However, this calm before the storm was short-lived. By the spring of 1940, Hitler's war machine was in full swing, and the world was being drawn deeper into the vortex of conflict. The world was once again plunged into the darkness of war, a war that would reshape the world as we know it. Now let's navigate the political currents of this tumultuous time. World War II was a period of stark political contrasts, with the main players being divided into two camps. On one side, the Allies, chiefly composed of democratic nations like the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union. On the other, the Axis powers, featuring the totalitarian regimes of Germany, Italy, and Japan. The political landscape of the Axis powers was dominated by ideologies that sought to control every aspect of life. Germany, under Adolf Hitler's National Socialist German Workers' Party, commonly known as the Nazi Party, implemented a totalitarian regime that suppressed political dissent and propagated the idea of racial purity. Italy, under Benito Mussolini's National Fascist Party, extolled the virtues of a strong centralized state and the revival of Roman grandeur. Japan, under Emperor Hirohito, was governed by a militaristic regime that glorified war and the emperor's divine status. Now let's pivot to the political systems of the Allies. The United States and the United Kingdom were both democracies, albeit with different structures. The United States, a federal republic, was led by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who navigated his country through the Great Depression and into the war with his New Deal policies. The United Kingdom, a constitutional monarchy, was spearheaded by Prime Minister Winston Churchill, whose rousing speeches rallied the British people during the darkest hours of the Blitz. The Soviet Union, however, was a socialist state under Joseph Stalin. Despite being a member of the Allies, its political system was far removed from the democratic ideals of the United States and the United Kingdom. Stalin's rule was characterized by a command economy, state control of the media, and purges that eliminated perceived enemies. This complex tapestry of political ideologies and systems set the stage for the most devastating conflict in human history. The democratic ideals of freedom and self-determination clashed violently with the totalitarian ideologies of racial superiority and absolute state control. In the face of such stark political contrasts, conflict was inevitable. The gears of war don't turn without fuel, and in this case, that fuel was the economy. World War II was not just a conflict of soldiers and strategies, but also a battle of resources and production. The economies of the warring nations underwent dramatic transformations to support the war effort. These changes marked the birth of what we now know as the military-industrial complex, a symbiotic relationship between a nation's military and the industries that support it. In the United States, factories that once produced cars and refrigerators were repurposed to manufacture tanks and aircraft. The government poured billions of dollars into defense contracts, leading to an economic boom that pulled the nation out of the Great Depression. By the end of the war, America had become the world's leading industrial power. Across the Atlantic, Germany's economy was also mobilized for war. Hitler's regime implemented a command economy, controlling all aspects of production and distribution. This allowed them to rapidly build up their military forces, but at the cost of civilian needs. By the end of the war, Germany's infrastructure was in ruins, and its economy was on the brink of collapse. In the Soviet Union, the story was similar. The state controlled the economy and prioritized military production above all else. Despite facing devastating losses, the Soviet Union was able to outproduce Germany in terms of tanks, aircraft, and artillery. Japan, too, transformed its economy to support its imperial ambitions. Its military-industrial complex was less developed than those of other major powers, but it still managed to sustain a prolonged war effort, even in the face of mounting resource shortages. The war economy had profound and lasting impacts, both during the conflict and in its aftermath. These impacts were felt not just in the nations at war, but across the globe. The economic transformations of World War II laid the groundwork for the post-war world order, shaping the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. War is not just a man's world. Women played a pivotal role in World War II. As the world was thrust into a time of conflict and uncertainty, women across the globe stepped up, filling roles traditionally held by men. They were the unsung heroes of a war that demanded every ounce of courage, resilience, and determination they could muster. In the factories, women became the backbone of the war effort. With men away on the battlefield, women took up the mantle of industry. They rolled up their sleeves and worked tirelessly, producing planes, tanks, and ammunition needed to sustain the fight. They were the welders and riveters, the mechanics and engineers, the lifeblood of the war industry. Their work was essential in keeping the wheels of war turning, but the contribution of women was not confined to the factory floor. Many served in the medical field as nurses and doctors, providing crucial care to the wounded and the sick. They were the comforting presence in the field hospitals, the steady hands in the operating rooms. They worked under intense pressure, often with limited resources, saving countless lives. And let's not forget the women who took up arms themselves. From the Soviet Union's deadly female snipers to the British women who operated anti-aircraft guns, women were not just supporting the war, they were fighting it. These courageous women stood shoulder to shoulder with their male counterparts, facing the same dangers and making the same sacrifices. Women also served in roles that required great courage, but lacked the glory of the battlefield. They were the code breakers, the spies, and the resistance fighters, operating in the shadows. Their contributions often overlooked, but no less crucial. The war necessitated a shift in societal norms, challenging the traditional roles of women. They proved beyond a doubt that they were capable, resilient, and vital to the war effort. The impact of their contribution was profound and enduring. It changed perceptions and broke down barriers. The war changed the role of women in society, paving the way for greater equality. In the crucible of war, women proved they were more than capable, they were indispensable. Let's delve into the cultural aspects of the war, particularly language and religion. These two elements, often taken for granted in times of peace, took on a heightened significance during the tumultuous years of World War II. We find that language in particular was employed as a powerful tool of propaganda by all sides involved in the conflict. Governments used it to shape public opinion, instilling a sense of national pride and a fervor for the cause. Radio broadcasts, newspapers, and posters were awash with words crafted to inspire, unite, and in many cases, demonize the enemy. But language wasn't just used to rally the masses. It also played a crucial role in the war's covert operations. Code languages were developed to disguise messages, while linguists were employed to break enemy codes. The success or failure of these linguistic battles could mean the difference between victory and defeat. Now let's turn to religion, which was unfortunately a source of division and persecution during the war. Numerous religious groups found themselves targeted, with the Jewish community suffering the most horrifically in the Holocaust. Yet religion also provided a sense of solace and hope for many in these desperate times. Faith served as a refuge, a beacon of light in the darkest of days. People clung to their beliefs, finding strength in their spiritual convictions. Stories of religious resistance and resilience are numerous, testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity even in the face of unimaginable horror. Religion, like language, also played a role in the war's political landscape. Some nations sought alliances based on shared religious beliefs, while others exploited religious differences to justify their aggression. In the face of such adversity, language and religion became both a weapon and a refuge. They were twisted and manipulated for nefarious purposes, but they also served as a source of strength and unity. They remind us that even in times of war, our shared humanity persists. Now let's unearth some lesser-known facts about World War II. As we delve deeper into the history of this monumental conflict, we unearth a trove of fascinating facts. Many of these, while overshadowed by the larger narrative, still paint a vibrant picture of the times. To begin with, let's talk about technology. World War II was a period of immense technological innovation. It was this war that spurred the development of the first programmable computer called the Colossus, used for code breaking. And it wasn't just computers, jet engines, synthetic rubber, radar. All these saw significant advancements during the war. On a different note, did you know that World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history? It's estimated that between 70 to 85 million people lost their lives, which was approximately 3% of the global population at the time. While we're discussing numbers, here's another surprising statistic. Over 600,000 carrier pigeons served in the war, carrying messages across enemy lines. These feathered soldiers proved invaluable in maintaining communication, especially in areas where radio communication was impossible. And let's not forget about the animals. More than 16 million animals served in the war. From horses and mules to dogs and pigeons, these unsung heroes played crucial roles in transportation, communication, and companionship. Finally, let's touch on something a bit lighter. Despite the grim circumstances, World War II also saw the birth of the beloved M&Ms. The hard candy shell was developed to prevent the chocolate from melting, making it a practical snack for soldiers on the front lines. And did you know a whopping 20% of the Soviet Union's male population perished in World War II? That's 1 in every 5 men. A sobering statistic that underscores the tremendous human cost of the conflict. These facts bring us face to face with the astonishing complexity of World War II. The war shaped our world in ways that are still felt today, from technological advancements to demographic shifts. As we continue to delve into history, we never cease to unearth new insights and perspectives. As we resurface from our dive into World War II, it's clear this was a conflict that reshaped the world. It was a war that erupted from the ashes of political unrest, fueled by economic strain, and painted a new landscape for the world as we know it. The tremors of this conflict are still felt today, in the political structures, economies, societal norms, and even in the languages we speak and the faiths we follow. From the outset, we saw how the war was ignited by a complex web of political tensions and territorial ambitions. It was a time when the world map was being redrawn, boundaries were being contested, and power was up for grabs. The political landscape was a battleground in itself, with ideologies clashing and alliances shifting like sand in the wind. The war economy was another facet of this colossal conflict. It was a time of austerity, rationing, and unparalleled industrial mobilization. The wheels of industry and commerce turned towards the war effort, transforming economies and societies in profound ways. It was an era that saw the rise of economic powerhouses and the fall of others, setting the stage for the global economic order we see today. The role of women in the war was revolutionary. From the battlefields to the factories, women stepped up, broke barriers, and shattered glass ceilings. Their contributions were instrumental in the war effort and beyond. It was a time that saw the rise of women's rights and their increased participation in society, signaling the beginning of significant social shifts. Language and religion, too, were not left untouched by the war. Amid the chaos and destruction, cultural exchanges occurred, languages evolved, and faiths were tested. It was a time when the human spirit was pushed to its limits, and our collective resilience was put to the ultimate test. And let's not forget the unearthed facts, the lesser-known tales, and the intriguing details that add color to the monochromatic narrative of war. These are the stories that humanize history, reminding us that behind every event, every statistic, there's a human story, a personal experience. As we reflect on these aspects of World War II, it's clear that this was not just a war, it was a defining moment in human history, a catalyst for change that has shaped our world in countless ways. From the ashes of this conflict, a new world order emerged, one that continues to evolve and adapt even today. Thank you for joining this historical deep dive. If you appreciated this journey, please show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Your support fuels our curiosity and helps us bring more historical gems to light. Until next time, keep diving into history. Because, as we've seen, the lessons from the past can illuminate our path into the future. Every dive into history is a step forward in understanding our world and our place within it. Now, it's up to us to carry these lessons forward, to learn, to reflect, and to grow. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving into history.